Welcome to the Celiac Diaries podcast. I'm your host, Lucia Cordero, and this is where we get real about life with celiac disease. Each week, I'll share practical gluten-free tips, wellness hacks, and honest conversations about the emotional side of living with an autoimmune condition. Think of this as your weekly mix of support, relatability, and inspiration to help you not just survive, but thrive with celiac. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder, I'm not a medical professional. Everything I share is based on my own experience living with celiac disease. This podcast is not medical advice, so please always consult your doctor about your own health. Welcome back to the Celiac Diaries podcast. I'm your host, Lucia Cordero, and we have a special guest joining us virtually today. All the way from Atlanta, we have Amy Behimer, who is a doctor of pharmacy. You're nationally board certified health and wellness coach, and you're also a podcast host yourself of the Autoimmune Health Secrets podcast. And I'm just so excited that you're here. I was just telling you this, but I feel like I personally have a lot to learn from you, and I know that our listeners are going to get so much from this episode, so I'm so excited.
Oh, right back at you. I am super excited to be here, and I think that the tie that binds us together is this autoimmunity. And so, I think we can learn from each other.
For listeners that don't know, you do a lot of work about helping people overcome the fatigue and uncertainty of autoimmune diagnosis and just take control of their health, which I just really admire that the work that you do. And as you said, I think there's a lot for people with celiac to learn from this, and also just anyone in the autoimmune community. Before we get into that though, we have a couple of segments on the podcast. So first up is gluten-free fave of the week.
I am gluten-free.
Okay.
I have been for over 10 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't even realize that. Okay.
Yes. So no gluten passes these lips. But the funny story in my tie to celiac specifically, I was actually on my first date with my husband, and my now husband, and he kind of looked like he had something to say. We were heading to dinner, and we didn't know each other well before. We worked at the same place, but we didn't know each other. And he actually kind of said it as if it was a bummer. He was like, oh, and I do have celiac. And I looked at him and I said, I don't eat gluten. And when I tell you, he was so excited, it almost seemed like I just told him that he won $1 million. But so I could see the history that maybe he had, and now that I know of kind of trying to explain to someone what this gluten-free life is. And so I'm trying to think, I probably should think of one for me and one for him, because we love some gluten-free products.
Wait, that's so cute. Oh my gosh. Okay, so your husband has celiac disease.
He has celiac, and so our household is fully gluten-free. And mine's not an allergy, but just for these other autoimmune diagnoses and all the wonderful health benefits that I've experienced personally. Everybody is a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But back to your question. That was a long-winded way
I love that story. That's so
cute. I love this goes back to childhood. I love a rice cake.
Okay.
And I know some people are like, blah, rice cakes. But I love them. I love crunchy foods. So I love a brown rice cake, and that is super crunchy, little salty, and I put cashew butter on it.
Ooh.
And that is my favorite gluten-free snack.
I love cashew butter. I never have cashew butter, but whenever I do, I'm like, this is such a treat, because I feel like it's kind of more rare to find at the grocery store. Yes. I actually love that. I used to have PTSD from rice cakes growing up, because that was the only gluten-free snack that my mom could find that she gave me, and I thought they were so bland. But now I actually love them, because I run a lot, and it's such a great pre-run snack, just a rice cake and some almond butter. So I feel you on the rice cakes. I used to hate them, but now I appreciate them for what they are.
Well, and a lot of people tell me that they have an experience in the past where they're diet food based. And I'm like, oh no, you should see the things I smother on a rice cake. It has nothing to do with being a diet food. I just think it's a delicious, crunchy vehicle for anything that I want to put in my body.
Exactly. It's all about the texture. Next up we have news of the week. This isn't necessarily an article, but something I saw from either your Instagram or your website that I thought was interesting. So it says, normal isn't working. This is what normal looks like in the US. 50% of adults live with chronic illness, 68% are overweight or obese, 70% take prescription meds, an average of 5 by age 60, 80% struggle with mental or emotional well-being, and only 2.7% maintain the 4 key healthy habits. And also more than 50 million Americans have autoimmune disease, and that number is climbing. I think these stats are, probably pretty familiar to people that listen to the podcast, but it is kind of jarring to read out loud. But I wanted to ask you, because I know a lot of your work is around like habit building and how if we build these habits and this mindset, we can kind of, I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but like tackle our autoimmune disease and like live a healthier, more joyful life. So what are the 4 key healthy habits?
Sure. The ones that from that study specifically, I believe it was maintaining a healthy weight, it was not smoking, moving your body, and getting adequate sleep. You'll see in the habit research that there are habits called the keystone or foundational habits that, again, circle around these things that we know we feel better when we're able to do. How we eat, how we move, how we sleep. And I include a few other categories, in the work that I do to really help us live a good life, feel our best, and give our bodies the best chance to function well with these diagnoses. And you mentioned at the beginning, mindset being one of them. And these habits are so well known. They're common sense, but they're not common action. And so it's not said from a place of, why are you not doing it? It's said from a place of so much love that our world is set up to make it feel very hard to do these basic healthy habits, to feed our bodies in a way that tastes good and that our bodies actually, respond well to. And so, yeah, my entire mission and work here is to help people realize it's not their fault. It is not your fault if doing the thing that feels healthy feels hard. Our modern society makes it difficult. And so I really just want to teach people about how to use habits in a way that is enjoyable, in a way that is effective, and in a way that we really can make them inevitable. Once we know how to change the things that we want to change in our life, we really are unstoppable.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like, just kind of taking it to a personal note, I feel like I'm good about 3 of those habits, but one of them I am so bad about, and I keep trying to figure out how to fix this habit in my life, but it's getting adequate sleep. I feel like I'm 26, I'm in my 20s, I'm in New York City. I just always want to keep doing more, and I feel like sleep is the thing that I end up compromising, even though I do know logically it's one of the most important things you can do, and it's so beneficial, especially having an autoimmune disease. But I find like this past weekend, I wanted to go out with friends, and then you stay up later, and then it's hard to get back on your sleep schedule, and then going after career goals and staying up late to edit a podcast episode and get it out. Yeah. What, just like selfishly, what advice do you have for someone like me who's really struggling with that one?
That is the least selfish question ever. The framework that I use are these 6 key areas. So we kind of talked about the 4 main ones, but sleep being one of them. And I'm just like you, where the first thing that I am going to sacrifice is my rest, which is one of the areas that, rest and sleep and relaxing, people will say, how do I stress less? And it's really more, how do I rest more? The opposite of stress is being able to have more restful habits. And so, yeah, we have habits and habitual routines happening all the way leading up until our bedtime. And then first thing in the morning, it starts again. And so one at a time, it truly is taking a habit-based approach, which is making it the focus of our goal. We often want to do everything all at once. So we want to change our food, our movement, but there needs to come a point when we say, you know what, right now rest is the most important. And so I'm going to figure out what are those tiny tweaks that I can make that end up getting me in bed at a time that I want and out of bed in a time that makes sense for me. So really the way that we would approach it is with what are the habits that need to be built. And then the good news is that we can borrow from your success in the other areas. We can see what actually is working that keeps you coming back to the exercise and to eating well, and not smoking even, to take it to extremes. I know smoking is a lot less now, thank goodness, but we use we use the same skills to build those other habits. We pull out the wisdom and the strategy and we apply it for rest. And personally, because like I mentioned, I struggle with this one where I'm going to do more. We're in a productivity world where doing more is the norm. And so sometimes, what that looks like for me is that my goals for the month actually are to do less. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but my goals will be to take something off my plate, to be able to rest more and set myself up for that sleep that I so desperately need. My framework is called the Habit Hub for autoimmune health, with these 6 key areas. And we all have a spoke that we neglect. And sometimes just knowing that, rest is an area that I tend to put to the back burner. Sometimes just knowing that can really help. But when it feels like you're having a bumpy ride, it's likely because we are neglecting one of these spokes. And so looking at it as a balanced approach and crucial to ensure that the other areas flow well is a key.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I'm curious if we could maybe workshop, because I liked what you said. It was so interesting about you can look and see how you were successful with other habits in your life and then apply that to the one that maybe you're struggling with. I think that would obviously be helpful for me and the listeners to kind of see a real scenario of that. So maybe we can use me as an example with the sleep.
Let's do it. And I'm so glad you asked. So what is a habit or an area of your life that you just feel so confident that if you make a plan, you're going to do it?
Okay. I think about movement, if I schedule a workout class, I'm training for a half marathon right now. I make all of my runs. I don't have a problem with that. So I guess I would say getting movement and exercise in.
Okay, movement and exercise. So what do you think about when you wake up in the morning and you know that you have it on your calendar? Do you schedule your workouts?
I do, yes.
Okay, so that's one strategy. I call it commit to the calendar. So things that are important to us, they deserve space on our calendar because our calendar is a very real, we can't really outsmart time. If it's on our calendar and we learn that we're gonna do the things that we set up on our calendar, then that becomes a really useful tool. So what would it look like to add something to your calendar that will help you increase the amount of sleep towards the amount that you want to be getting each night?
Interesting. I mean, would it be as simple as just putting in my bedtime on the calendar?
Could be.
Scheduling not just when I'm going to work out during the week, but also when I'm going to go to bed and when I'm going to wake up.
Totally. Yeah. And for that can be kind of a big leap. So it could even start with, what time am I going to put on my calendar to start winding down? Kind of a reverse alarm clock, but like an alarm clock to get yourself into that state for sleep.
Yeah, I think that's a good one because sometimes I'll be like, okay, I want to go to bed at 10 p.m. tonight. And then 9:45 rolls around and I'm like, okay, well, I'm still on my laptop. So by the time I do my skincare and wind down and take my supplements, it's going to be 10:30 because it takes me a second.
Yeah. And so really being realistic of what does it take? And the first few times that it pops up in your calendar, it's going to be totally normal that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready. But you start to get evidence and you start to learn about yourself as you craft your day and your night to know that, this is the time I want to get in bed. And the biggest thing, this is another strategy, it's called trust in the tiny, is that at first you may want to get in bed at a certain time, and that's very far off from where you are now. And so even trusting that 5 minutes can make a difference, 5 minutes earlier can build, and then 5 minutes earlier, and then 5 minutes earlier. And again, because you're the one putting it on your calendar, you know the nights that, I'm out this night. So this night, it's going to be late. I'm going to put 1 a.m. on my calendar. But just having a plan and then learning how to follow through on it is really powerful because you already do that with your workouts. And so, using that approach is one way.
I like that. How do you get to a place where it doesn't feel so rigid? Because it doesn't feel rigid for me with my workouts. It just feels like I'm making time for something that I enjoy doing. But with going to bed, I just feel like I'm already getting this mindset of like, oh, I just am worried that then I'm going to be too unbalanced.
You're asking such good questions. So this is the key. The key is to recognize you're the one setting the plan. So you right now likely have a bedtime in an ideal state of when you want to put that on your calendar. But I call it, you want to have a little planning meeting. You want to invite you who has to follow through on the plan that you set to the meeting. So like right now, let's invite you at 10 p.m. who has to actually close down her laptop and get herself into bed and start that routine. Let's ask her in that moment, what are you thinking? You see that it's on the calendar. Tell me what you're thinking. And that version of you likely is going to say, wait, I need a little bit more time. And then you can talk with her. You can say, all right, let's give 15 minutes. And so this back and forth where you honor all the parts of you and realize that you don't have to set any plan that you don't want to set. So it's only rigid if you're following a plan that you haven't come up with and that you don't love. So that may look like, doing it later. Maybe in the future, you'll back it up into a different time, but just starting very small, trusting that tiny changes can make a difference, and give yourself that love and support to invite the person who has to follow through on the plan to the planning session. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I like that exercise. I'm curious because we talked about like sleep as a form of rest. And then you briefly mentioned other forms of rest that are also important, but can be hard to find moments of rest that are actually restful. And I think that this is something that I know like my generation, Gen Z, is very focused on trying to figure out because it's so common to fall into the loop of resting, sitting on your couch and just scrolling on TikTok for 2 hours, and then you're done with that and it's Sunday at 8 p.m. and then you're like, okay, I guess I should go to bed now, but like I just feel awful about myself. I'm still tired. So how can we be intentional about rest that is actually restful?
So what is restful for you is not going to be restful for me. Or maybe we have some overlap, but we are all really unique. And so oftentimes the other tricky thing is that something that can be restful for a short amount of time, if it carries over, like you said, into a binging marathon of shows that you never intended to watch, all of a sudden it turns from this restful activity when done in moderation into something that does not feel restful, and we end up beating ourselves up over. And so again, it comes to the strategy of planning. It comes to the strategy of looking ahead and saying, how much time do I want to spend on TikTok? So for example, like you mentioned, or Instagram, you mentioned, well, I don't want to feel deprived. I don't want to feel rigid. If you looked at your day and said, you know what, I want to spend 30 minutes on Instagram. Learning the skill to follow through on the plan you set for yourself is the ultimate skill, because when that 30 minutes hits, you are going to have a craving to keep going. That's how those platforms are designed. And so it's learning how to honor your own word, to follow your own plan, that you can have a little bit of everything, but just recognizing that it's when it goes into the excess and when it goes into that feeling where I'm eating this and I feel like it's out of my control, or I'm watching this and it's out of my control. It's really about our trust with ourselves, that we will design a day that has a little bit of everything we love, that doesn't bleed into activities that just take over and then feels like it's outside of our control.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. And I think it kind of parallels too to what you were talking about earlier with success with other habits, because it's like sometimes I don't feel like going to my workout class, but then, you committed to it. You have a cancellation fee if you don't go. So then you go, and then you always feel better once you're there. And I don't know, I was just kind of thinking of this example too. It's like if you're out with friends and then you're like, okay, this last drink. Do I really need this last drink? Like, I've had a fun night, but like now it's 1 a.m. Do I really need another drink, or should I just go home and like end while the night is still on a high?
Yeah, and speaking of those strategies, a fee at a gym if you miss a class is very powerful. And that's in habit strategy is called a commitment device, meaning you make a decision that will make making a decision later easier. So the risk of losing that money is enough to overcome the desire not to go. And so we can use that with something you mentioned, staying on and scrolling and then feeling like, where did my day go? There are devices, there are tools and commitment devices to actually, turn off your phone. I have a brick. I don't know if you've heard of the device
I
called a
have. Do you
brick.
like that? Does it work well?
You know what? I love the brick. It's really neat how it speaks to me because it really uses this strategy of deciding to get the brick. It almost makes everything downstream easier because the decision is made for me. I can't get into those apps until I physically go up to my refrigerator and it's called unbricking. But essentially it turns your phone into a dumb phone at whatever level you want. So you can keep any apps that you want, but you're the one choosing which ones that you want to limit yourself. And again, we need to do these things because of the world that we live in. I mean, the dopamine that comes from processed foods, from social media, these are things that our ancestors didn't have to worry about. They didn't have to worry about our dopamine system being hijacked to the point where it's really hard for us to act on our best behalf. And so when we learn more about how our brain is working and we work with it instead of feeling like we're struggling against it, then that is when things can start to feel so doable and so in control. And it's a cool thing to learn about because it applies everywhere for sure.
Yeah, totally. And I think learning about that just helps you, one, become more aware, but also not so hard on yourself. Because I think back to the mindset, if you're just like, oh, I'm like such an idiot, or I'm so stupid, like I did this again, I can never stick to what I'm, setting on doing with my healthy habits. If you have that mindset about it, then you're never going to end up improving or developing something different. So I think it helps with being kinder to yourself in terms of understanding that this is the world that we live in, but it doesn't mean it has to shape how we're living our lives 100%.
Oh, totally. Like when we're telling ourselves we're just not good at it. I mean, instead, imagine if you told yourself, oh my gosh, there is this skill to make a plan, follow through on it, there's a skill to learn, and I'm just in the process of learning it, or I just haven't learned it yet. That's so much more compassionate and curiosity driven, because then your brain might say, well, how could I learn that skill? What could I do? And, another strategy and I'm pulling these strategies out. I have this playbook and there's 20 different strategies from all the different habit science. And we use different strategies for different habits. But another one that applies to both of these things that we've talked about specifically with you is the strategy that words matter. How we talk about these things matter. And so if you were saying to yourself, or saying maybe to a partner or a friend, oh, I have to go to bed because it's on my calendar, versus, oh, I am so excited. I'm going to do this wind down routine. I'm going to go to bed early because when I get up, I notice I run a little bit stronger and my training is a little bit better. And we start to use words to get our body on board with our plan, then it's really powerful. And back to, one of the reason that I'm here is for talk about gluten-free. When people are saying, I have this restricted diet, or I can't have that, this strategy of words matters does so much, because imagine if you are talking about and thinking and building up the belief with your words that, oh, I don't have a restricted diet. I actually am just feeding my body things that it really wants, feeding my body foods I love that love me back. And, those shifts in words can make such a big difference when we are also trying to make changes to our diet as well.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And I kind of want to get back to your personal journey and learn more about your diagnosis with MS and kind of where you were at that time, because I know that that was your fourth autoimmune diagnosis. Okay.
It was. It was. And I think that's also, for your listeners most likely, celiac is often one of many, in people. And that's not to scare people. If you
Mhm.
have celiac disease, that is absolutely, it can be the only diagnosis. But there is a strong correlation with autoimmune diseases that they cluster. And so my first diagnosis, I was 17, and it was a skin diagnosis called vitiligo. And at that point, I didn't know too much about the human body beyond what a high schooler knows. But when I went into pharmacy school in my early 20s, I started learning about autoimmunity and what was happening. And I started getting this sense like, whoa, if there's one, there could be others. And so my second diagnosis was a thyroid condition called Graves. And from there, it kind of became this ominous feeling of, is there another diagnosis? Like, what is not going well with my body that, I need to be paying more attention to? And so the third diagnosis was multiple sclerosis, which is MS. And that one really was a life quake. That one really woke me up and got me thinking that I want to do something different. I want to listen to my body and see what I could be doing better. And if you looked at me, I wasn't unhealthy. I mean, I exercised, I ate a lot of processed foods, probably like most people do, but there was something that clearly needed to change. And yeah, it really just set me down this path of how can I ensure that I'm doing my part with how I'm thinking, how I'm eating, how I'm moving, how I'm resting, all these different areas to give my body what it needs so that it can stop trying to get my attention with these diagnoses.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And what was, I guess, your journey from that to then developing and like learning more about the habit science and, all of the work that you do with like wellness coaching? Was that something that you were kind of already in before, or did that inspire you to want to help like make these changes for other people too?
It definitely inspired me. I was working as a pharmacist. I've been a pharmacist for almost 20 years, and I do love school. I do love learning. And so when I started learning these things for myself, I thought, gosh, a lot of people don't know this stuff. A lot of people are beating themselves up. I also felt like there was a missing piece, a missing voice out there for people who wanted to take advantage of what modern science was offering in terms of medications. So, I do take a medication that is proven in studies to halt or to slow disease progression as much as possible. But I also wanted, like I said, to do my part, to give myself the best chance. And so as I started learning about it, I considered going back to school to become a practitioner of functional medicine, which is the things we're talking about. How do we go to the root cause of what's happening? And then I realized pretty quickly, I don't want to become another expert that's prescribing, what people should do or ordering labs. I loved talking with people. I love working with people. I love, looking at someone and, telling them so confidently, you can do this, teaching it in a way that is tangible. And I just then, once I found out that there was a coaching program and there's now a national board certification that really is just advancing the field of coaching, I just knew that's what I want to do. I want to walk alongside people with whether they have one, two, three diagnoses, and make sure that it's their last diagnoses. Make sure that we are doing what we can to say, okay, we got a diagnosis, but now let's make our health better than it's ever been because of it.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I can just tell that you're so passionate about it. And that's so amazing.
I think, yeah, I love it. The habit piece of it, I would say there's a very small portion of people, it's like less than 10%, that if they decide to make a change, it's like as good as done. Like it almost comes supernatural that, they don't go back and forth much. And I'm kind of one of those people. So let me tell you, it really fascinated me that why does it feel kind of easy for me? And some things don't feel easy. I mean, I have my own struggles and ups and downs, and I have to use my tools all the time that I create for people. But it really fascinated me that, there is just a gap. And if people could learn this, and if people could, I like to say what we do is like we take things off the page and we bring it into real life. Atomic Habits is a book that
I love that
has
book.
been
Yeah.
number one. See? Yeah, it's been number one on the New York Times bestsellers for 6 years. And so obviously there's something about habits that attracts people to that book. And so I like to really let's live that book. And there's other great habit experts and researchers that, have influenced my work as well. But like taking that and really applying it to our real life so that we can not just think, oh God, those habits would be nice to have, but like to be able to have the confidence to decide this is what I want to do in this different area and like know that you're going to do it. Like that's just the coolest, most empowering thing. Especially with the one thing that I do different is I take how we're thinking and feeling and also apply the same habit strategy to it. So some people come in and they're like, I want to feel more optimistic, or I want to not think that life is so doomed because of this diagnosis. And so we apply these same strategies. We rewire our brain so that our habitual thoughts are more positive, so we can feel more positive as well. So it's definitely an inner and an outer approach, all with the goal of moving towards things that feel good versus things that feel, more. I keep saying the word doomsday, but sometimes it can feel that way when all we see is the disease part of things.
Definitely. And I feel like from starting this podcast, I've gotten a lot of comments that kind of have that doomsday mentality, which obviously makes me super sad, but I totally understand that, navigating a celiac disease diagnosis, especially at the beginning, can be so challenging, and it's such an adjustment. But I see comments like, oh, how do you even go out to restaurants anymore? How do you date? How do you live your life? I just feel like I can't do anything now that I have celiac disease. If you were talking with someone that was really at that level of just paralysis with celiac disease and just feeling super lost and the opposite of hopeful with their future, what would you say to that person?
It would be helping them find something that feels a little bit hopeful. So if hopeless is their main feeling, what is something we can find that's hopeful? And we have to be willing to go looking for it. So sometimes people are not in the space to go looking for it. This is not toxic positivity. This is not everything is going to be great, or I'm grateful for this. Sometimes we get to that point that we feel grateful for things, but when we're not there yet, we just have to ask ourselves if we are willing to let any of the positivity in. Our brains are wired to find the negative. It's called the negativity bias. And so if you think back on your day, you could have had so many beautiful things happen. You saw a friend, you said hello, you made it to work without getting in a car accident. You have a job, you have family, you had a warm house. But our brains will remember the one thing that went bad, right? It'll remember getting cut off in traffic or dropping that thing on the floor. And that's what our brains are trained to do to keep us alive, is to keep showing us the negative. And so if you're out there and you get a diagnosis, your brain's just acting how it's supposed to act. It's supposed to show you the danger that's coming. And so we're not going to get rid of that, but can we let in a little bit of the hope, a little bit of the positive that is out there if we're willing to go looking for it? And ever so slightly just allow room for both. So even if, someone asks, how are you? And your first response, you want to say something on the negative side or something that feels hard, do it, but then try saying and add something, just something that also is true, that we can pair with it. And we just start to neutralize and proactively overcome what our brain is going to spiral us into if we don't have this awareness to try to pull it out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm curious too, And I think I saw, something similar to this of something that you posted, but having like little reminders around your space or your environment. I'm curious if maybe you could share some examples of that could help. And I'm wondering too, if you think other aspects, like not just even your physical space, but the type of music that you're listening to and your friends and who you're following on social media, if that also really plays a factor.
Yeah, I mean, we are being fed not just by food, but yeah, our thoughts and our movement and our relationships, and all of these inputs create our body. And so the coolest thing about our body is that it is reproducing. So, you get a cut on your hand, and in a couple of days that's gone because you have new skin cells that have replaced the old ones that were damaged. Well, our organs, that's happening. Our liver is reproducing, our GI tract, our heart, even our nerves and our bones. And so if you think about, as we are becoming a new body, how are we making new cells, which become tissues and organs and systems? We're making new cells with the building blocks that we give ourselves. So the food we eat, the thoughts we think, the movement, again, the relationships. And so just knowing that can be so powerful to really look at what we're letting in. In terms of having things in your space, it's a process. I mentioned using the same habit strategy to have habitual thoughts. And a habitual thought is, one that we have thought so much time for so repeatedly that it becomes a belief, right? If we keep thinking the same thing, we have a lot of beliefs that, we've had since childhood. So what we want to do is we want to start to create new beliefs that feel really good and that help us have a really full life. So if your thought and habitual belief right now is, my life is worse because of this diagnosis, which I'm raising my hand. That was the thought that I noticed when I was first diagnosed is, oh my God, my life is always going to be worse now. This can happen and that can happen. But I didn't want to believe that. I wanted to believe that it's possible I can still have a really, really good life with this diagnosis. And so that became my goal, was to believe that. And so how do we get stronger at anything? We do repetitions, we practice. And so I call it planting a belief seed, meaning finding something that you want to nurture and give sunlight to, you want to fertilize it so that it can grow into a big, strong belief. And so, with my clients and me, I always have a belief seed that I'm nurturing, that I'm practicing, that I'm growing into. And so examples of ones are, I can do this. So I have one client right now who this whole month, she's practicing believing that when her mind tells her she can't do something, she wants to instead go, I can do this. And she finds that I can do it this way. I can do it that way. And she's just acting differently because she believes she can do it. Or another one that a lot of us plant when we first start working together is, I can trust in the tiny, which means, okay, I know I have this big change. Like I want to move my bedtime, or I want to go gluten-free completely. If you believed I can trust in the tiny, then you'd be open to moving that bedtime 5 minutes earlier, trusting that that'll make a difference in the long run. Or maybe right now relying heavy on gluten-free foods that are packaged, but maybe just one meal I want to find a way to make something that is not, trust that these tiny shifts make a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I think, so many things come to mind with everything that you just said, but one of them is whenever I was younger and newly diagnosed with celiac, a belief that I had was celiac was embarrassing. And now, I don't know if I was exactly doing like a habit or belief or mindset framework, but I think maybe just over time, I kind of got myself to believe somehow that it wasn't, even though that was like very like deeply rooted in me for definitely a few years when I was first diagnosed.
That's amazing. We do these things naturally sometimes. The other thing I was thinking of is a lot of your listeners have celiac. So when you eat gluten, let's say you went and ordered a bowl of pasta, what would happen?
I would probably have a really bad stomach ache and have like a breakout for the next week.
Okay. So that why is enough that, is it fair to say that you never go eat a bowl of pasta?
Definitely. Yes.
Okay. So that's a strategy where you found a why, and actually your body gave you a why that was strong enough to overcome the desire to still do it. So coming back to sleep, coming back to exercise, whatever your habit is, there is a why out there that will override the desire to do the thing. So, this is just a silly example that I use sometimes, but if I said, you are going to go to bed by 10 o'clock or you're going to lose an arm. This is gruesome, but I'm going to cut off your arm. You see how your brain would say, well, yeah, I'll get to bed by 10, and so
Yeah.
that's an extreme example, but finding what your why is. Is it because it helps you run stronger? Is it because you notice, wow, I do sleep better or my skin looks better? So that's just another way to how does having a celiac disease, it's kind of a built-in strategy, because so many people, like my husband, feels terrible. He will not ever go near gluten, if there's any risk of that. And so that's kind of a cool experiment to play with, is what would be a why that was big enough without my body having to scream at me? How could I find a why that would help me, feel the same way about this thing as I do about gluten?
Yeah, I really like that. I think something that is hard for people with celiac sometimes isn't necessarily going and that's a great example, but sometimes I think maybe if you've had celiac for a couple years, what's hard isn't going and eating a full bowl of pasta that has gluten in it, but maybe having an awkward conversation with your waiter and asking about cross-contamination. Sometimes it can be okay, well, I don't want to be a burden, or I don't really want to have to ask this in front of my date and seem weird or high maintenance. Yeah. How do you think about that why in a moment like that might be a bit more okay, not as extreme, I'm not going to be eating a whole bowl of gluten, but I won't know with 100% confidence if my dish doesn't have cross-contamination because I'm too scared to ask.
Yeah, that one. So, I get that. And that's probably why, like I said, my husband was like, oh, good, almost
Yeah.
I don't have to ask these questions in front. So, one of the things probably why he proposed to me was, we were going on a date once and I called ahead to ask for him. And he's like, what? Because he hates that table moment. And so we're two people who, we have two very different thoughts at that table. He will think, I don't want to bother them. It's embarrassing. He has this kind of what you mentioned. And so a belief seed that I planted years ago was it's okay. They want to help me get a meal that is good for my body. And can I prove that every waiter really does want to help me? No, some actually may be annoyed by it, but believing the best of intent and believing that I will repay this for every person in every form that looks, and put that out there in the world, helps me confidently be able to ask so kindly. I use it as a reason to show kindness for somebody who's working hard, show appreciation, show gratitude, and really trust that, we're taking care of each other, and really look at what is that thought that you think in that moment that keeps you from wanting to ask, and try to find one that you can shift to that will help you be loving to yourself, to be able to, get the foods that you want to be eating in a way that you're confident to do it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
But we do a lot of calling ahead too.
Yeah, totally. And that's just another habit that you can get in the habit of doing as well.
Yeah.
Which can be really helpful and make you not feel as stressed once you're actually there and be able to enjoy the night. So I think that's a great idea. Yeah. I'm curious, have you, and obviously you want to, shared explicit details, but I'm curious if you've worked with people that have celiac disease with your coaching, and what is something that maybe has surprised you with that, or something common that comes up with working with people with celiac disease?
It's kind of neat in my group because, yes, I have people with celiac disease. Some just have celiac, some have other conditions as well. And it's kind of the power of a group is really cool because we all have different circumstances and maybe different diagnoses. But what binds us is this autoimmunity and a desire to make, our lifestyles as healthy as they can be. And so what's really cool is that somebody who's choosing to give up gluten for reasons other than celiac can see me talking with someone who has celiac. We haven't touched gluten in forever, and we are really enjoying food. We're talking about recipes and restaurants and products, and it helps other people see that, oh, wow, maybe this wouldn't be that bad. And so, yeah, I think there's an initial bit of loss, but we allow that loss to be there. We process that, oh man, this is a bummer. And then we decide from there, if I know I want food to be delicious, if I know I want to be able to prepare food, whatever you feel like you're losing with this diagnosis with food, let's use that as a goal to keep that piece of food and just figure out a creative workaround to still get it, to still share food with people, to still, again, it comes back to eating delicious food, which it's possible. If you're open to ask the question, get creative, get support, there is a way to get whatever you feel like is missing with this diagnosis. There's a way to get around it to still get to experience that, I promise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I love that.
And one last why. I mean, I don't often think it's the gluten per se that helps me be as healthy as I am food-wise without gluten. What I think is most gluten in this country is packaged up in some pretty processed junky food. So if nothing else, really looking and saying, wow, I'm not getting the gluten, but you know what else I'm not getting? All the preservatives, all the junk and things that we cannot pronounce, that is usually packed up with gluten. So I think sometimes just kind of reframing that of I'm gluten-free, but I'm also a whole lot of junk-free too.
Totally. I love that mindset shift, and that's a shift that I had definitely in the past few years. And I kind of think about it sometimes because I remember about a year ago, one of my friends, she ended up not getting diagnosed with celiac disease, but she was going through a lot of tests trying to figure out what she had. And I remember she was getting the blood test for celiac disease, and she was texting me and she was like, oh my gosh, I really hope I don't have celiac disease. Like, I would absolutely hate that. And I was like, oh, well, it's really not that bad. I mean, I get that obviously no one wants to choose to have it, but I think once you do have it, maybe you just adapt to it. But I also think having that mindset of, okay, yeah, if you're, at work and there's like a big like cake that someone brought that like everyone's sharing, like I obviously like it would be nice to like have cake, and I still do eat cake, but like in that situation, it's like, okay, maybe I have a run later that day. Like it's kind of nice to be able to like have to not eat the cake, and then you see the benefit later on. That's like a silly example. But I think things like that and what you said about enjoying, okay, the food that you do get to eat that's gluten-free. And I think having celiac disease has taught me a lot to even look at the ingredient labels to begin with. So it's taught me a lot about things with my wellness that I wouldn't have taken the time to even care about otherwise. So I like that.
Yeah. And another belief seed that I think is so useful is, what if my body is really smart? Like, what if I can trust my body that it's telling me what it wants and needs? And I just find when I think it, my clients tell me when you think that, it's just so much more peaceful. And, we kind of let go of the reins a little bit and say, all right, this is something my body is telling me, and what if it's really smart? And I have to tell you, these bodies are really smart, and they're really intricate, and they have things happening that we will never understand. And so just trusting it a little bit, and it's another belief seed that's worth planting and nurturing and growing.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So will you tell us more? I mean, I know you've alluded to a lot of different like frameworks that you use, and this was such a cool conversation, but will you tell us more specifically about the work that you do, and if someone's interested in working with you, where they can find you?
Sure. You mentioned I am on Instagram, some at Amy Behimer Coaching. I also have a group membership, which it's called Club Habit Hub, or the club for short. But yeah, it's where we really strategically and simply and supportively look at what are these different areas in our lifestyle that we can, optimize habits again, you get to choose what habits those are. Nobody's telling you what you need to do. But, if you have that pull that, ooh, I kind of know I could feel better if I did this, or I wish I was doing that, anything like that, come in, learn the skill of habit change, learn how to decide what you want to try out, experiment with, listen to your body to see how it's going, and just have that confidence that you have a diagnosis, but from here on out, you are doing your part, you're doing your role to ensure that you're the healthiest that you can be. And so, yeah, we do live coaching. There's a really beautiful, wonderful community in there for, again, sharing, what's happening in other people and what they're learning. And then there's also, I teach a bit in there, things just to the basics, again, how to work with our brain, work with our body in a way that living a healthy life no longer has to be the abnormal thing. Back to those statistics that you mentioned, it can feel really hard to be the one asking, what's in this? Or do you use a separate fryer? I mean, it can feel hard to be that person. And so it's really smart to put yourself in spaces where the things that you want and the things that you need are the norm, where you get to feel like, wow, in this space, I'm not the abnormal one. And so I call it being an orange fish. An orange fish is someone who kind of defiantly goes against the norm because you want to feel good, you want to take care of your body. And the really cool thing about that is when you do, the others around you, it's impossible for them not to notice. It's impossible for them not to become a little bit healthier or notice what they're eating or be really empowered by the fact that you bravely asked the server that, because maybe in a couple years they won't be able to eat dairy or whatever it is. Like, really taking on that mindset that you are taking care of yourself and, leading the way when it comes to breaking up with some of those statistics that are so real here in this country.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. The orange fish. That's cool.
Orange fish. Yeah, I have clients who, I love it. She paints orange fish on rocks, and she'll go to get her exercise in. She goes and plants the rocks in different places and then goes to visit the rocks to see if they're gone. And people take the orange fish everywhere. So it's kind of a really cool, beautiful way to think about the literal impact we have on other people.
Yeah, that's so fun. Okay. I'm curious if there's just one takeaway that you can leave with our listeners, especially those that have celiac disease. What would you want them to take from your story and the work that you do?
I think it's that a diagnosis, while we don't want it, we wouldn't choose it, I think that if we can take a diagnosis and use it as a reason to become a healthier version of yourself, why not? I mean, you already have the diagnosis. It's listening to your body and really just show it. Man, I love you and I'm going to listen, and not just with food, but with all these different areas, and just, bravely learn what we need to learn to give ourselves the best chance to have a really healthy life.
Yeah. Amazing. Such a great way to end this episode. This was so informative, and I know this is going to be such a valuable episode for our listeners, so I'm so excited. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I thought we were going to be talking so much about food, but your real examples just were, thank you for bravely asking and, being willing to talk through that, because it's kind of fun to talk about not all gluten on the show. I love this show and I love what you're doing. So thanks for everything.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel like I try to make time to also talk about other things that might not just be the gluten-free diet. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode. Don't forget to follow the show, rate us, leave a 5-star review, send this episode to a friend. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Celiac Diaries podcast. I hope you're leaving with a tip, a story, or just a little inspiration to live your best life with celiac. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show, share it with a friend, or leave a review. I'll see you back here next Wednesday. And until then, stay well.